You're sitting in a meeting, the screen share is loading, and you have maybe 4, maybe 5 seconds of dead air while that little wheel spins on your monitor.
Oh yeah, the absolute longest 5 seconds of your life.
Literally. And in that exact microscopic gap, your mind instantly splits in 2 completely different directions. Like, first it snaps backward.
Right, to a past failure.
Yeah, it lands on this demo you gave, like 6 months ago, where the dashboard completely failed to refresh, and you had to sit there and explain broken numbers to a room full of skeptical stakeholders.
And that memory, it doesn't just flash in your head, right? It hits you physically. It sits in your chest like a lead weight.
Exactly.
Because your nervous system is treating an event from 6 months ago as an active, immediate threat. It's a biological alarm screaming at you to avoid repeating a social failure at all costs.
But the crazy part is, while your body is bracing for that past failure, your mind simultaneously jumps forward.
To the pitch you're about to give.
Right. You imagine this current pitch going perfectly. You see the stakeholders nodding. You envision the follow-up meeting getting booked. You hear your manager praising you. You feel how incredible that would be.
But then holding on to that fantasy immediately introduces a new problem.
Yes, because you feel a sudden, gripping terror at the prospect of losing it. So the past just materialized as acute shame, and the future just materialized as intense loss aversion.
All in 5 seconds.
All in 5 seconds, the screen share is still loading, and you are already fighting this massive two-front biological battle.
Well, the brain simply doesn't distinguish between a past failure and a potential future loss. It treats both unresolved past events and pre-claimed future rewards exactly the same way.
As threats.
Exactly. It categorizes them as open loops that require urgent defending. Neither of those threats is actually happening in the present moment, yet your body is preparing for a physical altercation.
Okay, let's unpack this because the underlying mechanics here are fascinating. Think of your brain like a computer. You're trying to run a highly demanding application, which is, your presentation.
Right, the main task.
But your RAM is being entirely consumed by these massive, resource-heavy background processes. You have the past shame loop and the future anxiety loop eating up all your available memory.
And so the system stalls out.
Yeah, because those background processes are hoarding your cognitive resources, the main application starts to crash, your chest tightens, your breathing goes shallow.
You're essentially trying to run your professional operating system on the oxygen equivalent of bad Wi-Fi.
Which is such a great way to put it, and the standard advice in this moment is to just, calm down or just focus.
Which is terrible advice.
It's almost insultingly useless. Telling someone to calm down in that state just makes it worse.
Because trying to use logic to override a physiological response is a losing battle. You cannot reason your way into feeling calm.
Why not?
Because the very act of focusing requires the exact biological resources your body is currently spending on those perceived threats.
Oh, wow. So you literally don't have the fuel to focus.
Exactly. The tactical fix for this internal friction is not some complex mindfulness routine. It's the purely mechanical act of feeling your breath.
Just feeling it. No counting or anything.
No counting. There are no holds or special patterns to memorize. You simply notice that you are breathing. You physically feel the air entering your body, your chest expanding, and the exhale releasing.
Which honestly feels almost too simple, Like, we expect complex corporate anxiety to require some high-level cognitive solution, not just noticing air moving through our lungs.
What's fascinating here is that the simplicity is exactly why it works. When you consciously bring your attention to your physical breath, your breathing naturally deepens without forced effort.
So you're not forcing a deep breath, it just happens.
Right. And this draws more oxygen into your system. Consequently, your heart rate begins to drop. The physical preparation for a threat, that whole fight-or-flight response, begins to then stand down.
It's mechanical.
Purely mechanical. By aligning your attention with a present physical sensation, you send a direct signal to your brain that the emergency is over.
The tiger is not in the room.
Exactly. The brain then takes all those hijacked resources and redirects them back to the present moment. And just as your heart rate settles, the screen share finally connects.
Okay, so breathing gets the Wi-Fi back online and stops the immediate panic. You survive the meeting. But surviving isn't actually building anything.
Right, it just gets you back to baseline.
So once you have your brain's RAM cleared out, how do we actually translate that calm into output? How do we move from having internal focus to creating something valuable without falling back into that trap of just follow your passion.
Ugh, the passion advice.
Because that generic advice usually just leaves people staring at a blank page for an hour, completely paralyzed by the pressure to find their life's purpose.
The problem with the Find Your Passion formula is that it operates entirely in a vacuum. It asks you to evaluate your internal desires without ever testing them against external reality.
It's too inward-looking.
It's completely inward-looking. But we can replace that with a highly effective filtering question. The question is this: what am I already doing privately that I am willing to do in public in service of others?
Okay, let's break down those 3 filters, starting with what you are already doing privately, because this immediately bypasses the dreaded motivation problem.
Totally. You don't have to force yourself to start.
Yeah, if you're already doing something in secret, without payment and without external pressure, you possess inherent momentum. You're not trying to generate discipline from scratch.
Give me an example.
Okay. Say you spend your evenings taking black and white Japanese manga panels and using AI models to colorize them. You spend hours tweaking the palettes to match your specific aesthetic, and you save them into a hidden folder on your hard drive.
Just for yourself.
Right. You've already overcome the hardest part, which is starting.
And that leads to the second filter, in service of others. This shifts that existing momentum outward. The manga colorization example works beautifully because manga fan art is a highly active online community.
People actually want to see that.
Exactly. Other fans would genuinely use, share, and enjoy the work you're producing. This points to the structural difference between a personal hobby and a viable project.
The hobby is just for you.
Right, the standard passion exercise produces ideas that start and end with you. But this filter produces ideas defined by the value someone else extracts from your effort.
But the third filter is the one I kind of want to challenge. The filter is willing to do in public. And willing does not mean comfortable.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It means executing the work despite the friction. Like if you post those AI colorized manga panels, you will inevitably face intense criticism from people who despise AI-generated content. You're going to have to deal with the AI slop critics.
You're inviting resistance.
Yeah, and you might eventually have to handle strict production schedules, client deadlines, or algorithm changes. I push back on this because of our modern cultural obsession with monetizing absolutely everything we love.
The whole hustle culture thing.
Exactly. If your true passion is repainting old furniture in your garage on a Sunday afternoon or drawing original characters in complete peace, you should fiercely protect that. Not every private joy needs to be subjected to public friction.
And protecting a private joy is entirely valid. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, that friction is precisely why this 3-part filter is so effective for building a career or a business.
How so?
It acts as the ultimate honest decider. It strips away all the romanticism and forces you to confront the reality of building something.
Oh, I see.
Do you actually want to sustain this effort for others through the inevitable initial hump of total obscurity, the public criticism, and the daily grind? Or is this activity strictly for your own personal enjoyment?
It forces a choice.
Yes. Answering that critical question determines whether you will actually survive the execution phase of any ambitious project.
So you figured out your individual output. You know what you're building and why you're willing to endure the friction. But scaling any meaningful project requires collaboration.
You can't do it all alone.
You cannot build complex systems alone. And the moment you introduce collaboration, you run headfirst into the greatest failure of the modern workplace.
Let me guess.
The standard calendar invite.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right. An invite lands in your inbox for a Q3 planning sync. There are 8 people on the invite. There is absolutely no description. There is no agenda.
Just a block of time forcefully reserved on your calendar.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. An empty agenda doesn't create a neutral space for collaboration. It creates a massive vacuum.
And human nature dictates that people will aggressively fill vacuums with their own immediate anxieties and priorities.
Yeah.
When you gather 8 professionals in a room without defining the specific edges of the problem, everyone arrives carrying their own baggage.
Totally. One person immediately hijacks the conversation to complain about engineering resourcing.
While another person pivots the entire discussion to arbitrary marketing timelines.
Because the organizer waited until everyone was in the room to actually define the problem, the first 20 minutes of the meeting are completely squandered on pure calibration.
Just figuring out why you're there.
You're wasting immense bandwidth just trying to figure out why you are all looking at each other across a table.
To correct this, we could look at a framework developed by an entrepreneur who scaled massive companies and realized millions of dollars were being wasted in these undefined meetings. The formula for meeting architecture is constraint plus options plus impact.
Constraint, options, impact.
Right. You must establish these three elements before the meeting ever begins.
Okay, so the constraint is a problem with clearly defined edges. It's not a broad theme. Like Q3 planning is a theme, which is practically useless.
Completely useless.
But saying, we need to decide whether to delay the mobile app launch by 2 weeks or ship on time with the current reduced feature set, that is a constraint.
Yes, it dictates exactly why those specific 8 people need to be in that specific room.
But what about the options part? Because if I'm the organizer and I send an agenda with pre-baked candidate solutions, aren't my colleagues going to feel like I'm a dictator who already made the decision for them?
That is a very common fear, but the psychology actually works differently. You aren't mandating a solution, you're providing a starting point.
Ah, okay.
Asking a room full of expensive professionals to generate ideas from absolute zero is highly inefficient. It's that blank page paralysis all over again, just in a group setting.
Right, staring at the whiteboard waiting for magic to happen.
Exactly. By presenting them with specific pre-formulated options, you are asking them to pressure test those ideas against their specific domain expertise. You're giving them a coloring book instead of a blank canvas.
That makes a ton of sense. And finally, the impact. This defines what the decision actually unlocks or unblocks downstream in the organization.
It creates stakes.
Right. When you put the stakes on paper in the invite, it fundamentally alters the psychology of the attendees. They understand the exact cost of failing to reach a consensus.
A well-architected invite actually starts the meeting in the inbox.
I love that phrase. Starts in the inbox.
Yeah, because when those 8 professionals walk into the room, they've already spent 20 minutes in the background of their minds, processing the constraint, evaluating the options, and measuring the impact. They arrive fully oriented.
Ready to work?
The actual scheduled time becomes the final stage of a decision-making process that began days earlier. You write the agenda like the actual decision depends on it, because it does.
But having a perfectly architected meeting and reaching a brilliant decision is entirely useless if that decision fails to propagate effectively through the rest of the organization.
Oh, the communication breakdown?
We have all experienced this exact failure of information delivery. You notice the shared kitchen is a disaster. You send a very polite, clear message to the main team chat. Hey everyone, quick reminder about the shared space rules. Please be mindful of cleaning up.
With a little passive-aggressive smiley face.
Naturally. You hit send, you consider the problem handled, and a week later you find that absolutely nobody saw the message and the kitchen is worse than before.
The natural reaction is to assume your colleagues are intentionally ignoring you.
That they're just being lazy.
Right, but that assumption ignores the mathematical reality of information-dense environments. Your single message didn't fail because of malice. It failed because it was instantly forced to compete with calendar reminders, urgent project updates, a thread about someone's birthday, and a crisis concerning a missed deadline.
It just got buried.
You fired one piece of information into a highly noisy channel. In the physics of organizational communication, one message equals exactly one chance of landing.
One chance?
And each subsequent message you send into that noise carries a mathematically lower probability of reaching its target.
It's the equivalent of whispering in a crowded stadium and being angry that the person across the field didn't hear you. But most people view repeating themselves as a nuisance, an annoyance or a sign of poor management. They don't want to be the person posting notes everywhere.
But intentional redundancy is a non-negotiable requirement. This raises an important question about how we view repetition. To penetrate an information-dense environment, you must repeat the core message across both time and formats.
Time and format, so spacing it out and changing the medium.
Exactly. You send the digital group chat message on Monday. That covers the digital format and captures the people actively monitoring the channel. Then, you physically print the shared space rules and tape them to the refrigerator in the kitchen.
That introduces a physical format?
Right. Finally, you send a brief follow-up reminder in the chat on Thursday. You are intentionally casting a net across multiple dimensions of attention.
Because the cross-section of attention is the key metric. The employee who was overwhelmed with deadlines on Monday and missed the digital chat, they'll physically walk past the printed sign on Tuesday when they go to get coffee.
They literally can't avoid it.
Yeah, and the employee who ignored the physical sign because they were lost in thought might catch the digital reminder on Thursday when their workload is lighter. Redundancy ensures the message survives the noise.
You actually see this exact architecture running the modern social media landscape. A highly effective creator doesn't just have a good idea and tweet it once.
No, definitely not.
They post the core idea as a tightly edited short-form video. Then they publish a comprehensive long-form essay exploring the nuances.
Huh.
Then they distill the essay into a bulleted thread.
They're capturing an entirely fragmented audience.
Exactly. The video catches the commuter on the train. The essay catches the reader on a Sunday morning. The thread catches the executive skimming during a boring meeting. In any noisy environment, sending a message exactly once is functionally identical to never having sent it at all. A message doesn't inherently deserve attention. It must aggressively earn its reach by materializing in multiple places.
Okay, so you're establishing your internal focus, you're finding a project people actually care about, you're stopping the endless meeting bloat, and you're making sure your team actually hears your decisions. Your engine is humming.
Things are going great.
Right. But inevitably, a secondary threat emerges. You will look up from your work and see someone else moving much faster than you.
The comparison trap.
It's brutal. You open Instagram on a Sunday morning while waiting for your coffee. The first thing you see is a mentor you deeply respect announcing they've just closed a 7-figure revenue year.
Ouch.
You scroll down one post, and you see a colleague who is 2 levels above you in the corporate hierarchy celebrating a massive promotion.
And just like that, the day is done.
You close the app, but your entire morning is ruined. Your momentum is shattered. The Sunday night anxiety creeps in 12 hours early. You feel hopelessly behind.
That resulting paralysis is the cost of utilizing a broken benchmark. When you experience that immediate sense of failure, you're falling victim to a major error in variable analysis.
What do you mean by variable analysis?
You're measuring their visible outputs as if your current inputs were identical, and they are not.
Oh, I see.
The mentor who closed the 7-figure year possesses a decade of compounding invisible repetitions that you have not yet executed. The colleague who secured the promotion has navigated through brutal organizational cycles, survived project failures, and built political capital in arenas you haven't even entered yet.
You're basically comparing your Chapter 3 to their Chapter 20.
Precisely.
Measuring Chapter 3 against Chapter 20 provides absolutely zero actionable data about your current speed or trajectory. It only serves to make your current chapter feel like a failure. So what does this all mean?
The fix requires a complete abandonment of external reference points. You have to stop using the people ahead of you as the benchmark for your own velocity.
Stop looking sideways.
You have to aggressively lock into your own proprietary data. You must actively track your own progress. You journal your daily outputs, you conduct weekly reviews of your completed tasks, and you rigorously check your quarterly execution against your annual goals.
Basically, becoming obsessed with your own metrics.
Yes, when you genuinely lock your attention onto reviewing your own historical metrics, you systematically eliminate the mental capacity required to track other people's progress.
We are right back to the computer RAM analogy from the beginning of our discussion.
Exactly. It all ties together. If your entire cognitive bandwidth is consumed by analyzing your own growth rate, measuring your current output against your past output, and strategizing your next immediate action,
There's no RAM left.
there is literally no processing power left for the comparison loop. The mental space required to feel envious simply ceases to exist.
That's incredible.
You face a binary choice every single morning. You can spend your limited cognitive resources measuring your Chapter 3 against someone else's Chapter 20, which guarantees paralysis. Or you can spend those exact same resources writing your next stage.
We spend so much time obsessed with how efficiently we can process the massive volume of external information bombarding us every day. But what if the ultimate structural advantage in your career isn't your processing speed at all? What if the true advantage is how ruthlessly you protect your own internal metrics of success from outside interference?